What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. So Tiger King is a phenomenon all across the United States and basically all over the world. Now, there were only 7 episodes of this show, and people have been wondering and speculating, are we getting more? Will there be a season 2? Will they ever bring the show back? And this past week, there were numerous rumors saying, well, we're going to get an after show for Tiger King. There is going to be another episode. Is it going to be in the same format of what we know, or will they combine the two ideas and bring us that as the 8th and supposedly final episode of the show? Well, that's basically what happened, because this morning, the Tiger King and I, the 8th and supposedly final episode of Tiger King, dropped on Netflix, and in this after show, Joe McHale talked with Jeff, Saf, Eric, and more to get their reactions to the series, their portrayals, and their new fame. Now, as someone who is a fan of this show and what it brought us, at least the entertainment value, right, I did kind of want to see an episode in the same format of what we got in the documentary. I was hoping this after show would be a separate thing. Unfortunately, that's what we ended up getting, and unfortunately, due to things going on in the world, due to quarantine, it was laid out how we have been seeing everything else in the world being laid out, and that is most likely a Zoom session. So, there you go. But there were a few quote-unquote interesting enough points brought up by a few of the characters in the show, and we got some genuine reactions on how this documentary has affected them. So in this video, we're going to run through each interviewee. Joe McHale did a solid job as the interviewer. He's a funny individual, and even though we have been getting a similar thing with David Spade, as he has actually been utilizing his new show on Comedy Central, that is hilarious, by the way, to find all of the people involved with Tiger King and do his own interview sessions. So I recommend checking out David Spade's version of this if you haven't already. But Joe McHale got some very interesting things out of these individuals. So we're going to talk through these today and basically run through what this episode was, what it means for the future of the Tiger King, and how some of these individuals genuinely feel about Joe Exotic. And we start with Eric. Eric, one of the most fascinating individuals to come from the show, and he has absolutely no filter, as does Joe McHale. Joe does not swerve around mentioning things that may be personal to some of these people, but hey, they're out there, they're in the documentary now, and the most interesting thing I got from Eric is the fact that he still hasn't seen the documentary, and he claims to be working all the time, and that's what's keeping him from it, but he is the only one that I know of that was interviewed that just hasn't taken the time out of his schedule to watch it. He also does not think Joe should be free. It was a very strong and passionate statement, and he basically said, listen, I don't like this guy. He is as bad as everyone has been saying he is within this show, and he did mention that Joe would put down some of these cats even when they shouldn't have been put down. So some strong statements made by Eric, and definitely one of the most impactful parts of this interview series. Then we have Jeff. Jeff, who has this idea in his head that he was portrayed as the villain in the documentary. Very passionate about that. He and his girlfriend were giving some interesting pieces of info to Joe McHale, saying that Alan, the guy that was, hired to kill Carole, is genuinely a sweet guy. He also backs up Eric by saying Joe would kill healthy tigers. So this is 2 people in a row who are basically completely against Joe Exotic. And then he was asked if the character of James, who wasn't actually part of this interview series, has the quote-unquote dirt on Jeff that he claims he has. And Jeff says no, and Jeff basically says, listen, we know as much about James as James knows about us, and we know that there's a lot going on in James's life that wasn't revealed in the documentary, so I found that extremely interesting. Then the final big piece of info that we got from him is basically he agrees with most everyone else that Carole killed her ex-husband, so not going to dive into that, but good job, Jeff. And then there is John, who thankfully agrees with me that Matthew McConaughey should play him in whatever movie or show they make from this documentary series. Don't know if that would ever happen, but it's perfect casting. He also says that he was there the entire time for the animals, not for Joe. and that Joe never actually realized how important John was to this entire thing. Joe being a guy who thinks that he's on top of everything and that he's the only one that should be in charge, but John had important responsibilities that he felt that he executed properly on, and he also does not think this court case is over. He feels as if something else is going to happen, as if it's going to continue to move at the slow pace that it's been moving. And it's another guy who doesn't sound like he's all there with Joe. Doesn't like him. And then we have another person involved that, yes, is completely outraged by Joe shooting the Tigers. This is the character of Kelsey. But he still has no regrets about losing his arm. He also says that he's kind of upset that all throughout the documentary they were referring to him as a girl when he chooses to identify as a guy. But he did have some nice things to say about Joe, surprisingly. He does talk about the Thanksgiving dinners, how that was an ongoing thing, and what Joe would do for people that wasn't brought up in the documentary. Now, he's very firm on the fact that Joe probably did get what he deserved, but there was some good in there as well, and I think that good was, slightly displayed on the documentary, but it sounds like they could have dived even deeper into that aspect. Also, he's not mad at the tiger that took his arm, so, that's pretty impressive. Now we go to Josh Dial, the campaign manager, who also thinks Joe is crazy. Joe didn't leave a very good impact on a lot of individuals that were involved in this show. Then he recounts his experience with Travis shooting himself, what I believe to be the most surprising and heartbreaking aspect of the story, how Travis really didn't know what was about to happen. He could see in Travis's eyes that he truly did not mean to do what he did, and the shock, he said about 5 seconds before Travis truly realized what had happened. Man, it's just a heartbreaking thing to witness, to experience. We know that has to be a devastating thing to live through. And then he ends off saying, I wasn't completely surprised when Joe was found completely guilty on all charges. Then we have John Finlay. And John Finlay actually didn't reveal near as much as I anticipated. He had less to say than pretty much everyone. Now, if you go check out David Spade's interview, I believe he genuinely gives more there than he does here. But you do once again rehash the fact that he now has teeth. He's wearing a shirt. Joe McHale jokes with him back and forth with that. But he also reveals that he has been clean for 5 years, and he was slightly portrayed as a druggie in the documentary and as someone who struggles on those fronts, but he says multiple times to Joel that once his daughter was born, he decided to get clean, and then he ends with saying he did binge the documentary as soon as it came out, all 7 episodes, just to get ahead of what he never knew would blow up in the way that it did. Now, this is the interview that fascinated me the most because Rick Kirkham is just an interesting guy to talk to. He's been there, he's done that, he has experience. They talk about when he worked at Inside Edition, how he was recognized as being a major part of that, but nothing to the level that Tiger King has brought. And oh, by the way, Rick is actually in Norway, and he's still often recognized when he goes out. And all of these individuals mention that, they talk about it, but the fact that Rick is in the newspaper all the way in Norway is just a true testament to how many people this show has reached. He describes how some of the things that he saw Joe do was just wrong, things that weren't even brought up in the documentary. Joe apparently shot a horse that he was supposed to take care of and fed it to the tigers. He saw Joe shoot 2 tigers when they shouldn't have necessarily been put down. And the craziest thing that he talked about was the fact that Joe, being the quote-unquote Tiger King, is actually terrified of big cats. Right? The cats that we normally saw him with, he said one is slightly blind and the other was suffering from its own issues, and Joe had this fear of big cats. Now, I don't know if I 100% believe that just because of what I saw him do, but we do mostly see Joe with baby cats instead of big cats. Now, we do see him with the big cats, but according to Rick Kirkham, he was scared. He also says that he just regrets the entire thing together. Sure, a lot of fame has come through this for each of these individuals, but he regrets meeting Joe Exotic just because of the toll that had to take on him, and he doesn't seem like a guy that cares all that much about being famous, even though he is a character in himself. And other than those pieces of information from all of these interviews, we really didn't get anything more detailed than that, other than the fact that most of these individuals do not like Joe, regret being a part of this thing in the first place, but a few of them, you could tell from the emotions on their face and the smiles that they don't mind being as famous as they are now. They don't mind being recognized in public. It was overall a solid session of interviews, and I do believe Joel McHale did as good as he could possibly do given the situation, given quarantine, and the fact that you couldn't actually do something like this in person. Now, in a way, does it feel like Netflix is slightly milking the Tiger King having this session of interviews? Sure, especially making this the 8th episode instead of making it its own after show, which I thought would be the best move to make. It's not an episode of Tiger King to me, but it was an interesting thing to dive into and get the reactions post-documentary. But hey, if you enjoy this video and you like what we're doing on this channel, be sure to smash that thumbs up button, and I'd love to have your comments down below. Did this feel like enough for you all, given the build-up and the rumors and the speculation about a new episode? Did you like the way he interviewed these individuals? Did you find some of them slightly awkward, slightly funny? I would love to know all of those things down below. I appreciate you guys for watching this video, and let me know if you'd like more Tiger King coverage, because I am a huge fan of this show. Hope we get something else eventually, but if we don't, it was a good season of television. You guys are the best. I'll see you soon.